Hey everyone, welcome to the last lecture for 3103. Congratulations, you have made it. This will be short. I just wanted to talk a little bit about integrating evidence-based practice and talk about what we're kind of going to be doing this week and what some projects in the future look like for the program. This came out of chapter 10 of Melnick, and they really talk about different ways to embed evidence-based practice into an organization. How can we let nurses know that this is a part of who we are? I think that's where it all starts. And evidence-based practice can be so scary. I still find it scary sometimes just because it's unknown to me. I wouldn't say it's unknown, but it's unfamiliar. How about that? It's unfamiliar to me, and I haven't done a lot of it. I'm getting better at it, especially as I've moved further into education and being an educator at a university. It's part of my job now. But especially when I was working as a nurse on a floor, doing evidence-based practice and research was not something I really ever thought about. So I think that's something as an organization as a whole really has to work on incorporating, and that's what this chapter was talking about. They talk about adding it into the mission statements. So actually, we're going to talk about that on the next slide. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. Make sure it's in a job description. Just let nurses know, hey, this is what we do here. Implement evidence-based practice mentors. This is huge. If you have somebody who is very good at research or who has done a lot of it, it's easy to bounce ideas off of them. And I think somebody that you guys can use for an evidence-based practice mentor while you're in the program would be the library. They're so good at helping, whether it's through email or over the phone. I have had so much success working with individuals in the library. There are also ladder programs, shared governance councils, and policy and procedure committees that we're going to talk about. So, mission statements. There was an example in the book that said nurses thrive in an environment that promotes clinical inquiry and inclusion of best evidence, clinical expertise, and patient voice. So that was part of their mission statement. I don't think that a hospital that I've worked at has had that included in their mission statement, but I think maybe that might be something we see in the future. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if you know what your hospital's mission statement is. This is something that you will explore a little bit more in NUR 4108. We talk about mission statements and leadership. Job description and evidence-based practice mentor, listing that evidence-based practice is required. I talked about this a little bit already, but putting that on the job description and just letting not only nurses but staff know that's part of what the hospital does. A requirement to join committees. I know what you're thinking, just something else I have to do. And it's hard to join a hospital committee, right? You know, if you're night shift but they meet during the day, it makes it really hard. Participating in research. I think this is also difficult unless you have a mentor. It's good to piggyback on with someone to start participating in research. I would be really interested to know if you guys are on any committees within your hospital and what you discuss. What are you a part of throughout that? Shared governance goes along with committees. Shared governance is designed to integrate core values and beliefs to achieve high quality care. So really what shared governance is about is it's to get nurses involved, to get staff involved. It's very nursing driven, to let our voices be heard. Some examples of a shared governance committee would be the policy and procedure committee. Maybe you're on an evidence-based practice council. Maybe you're on a unit or a department council. So you have like a unit council of 5 or 6 of you that meets once a month to discuss issues on the unit. There's a lot of different ones. So if you're on one of those, shoot me an email. Week 7, bonus points. I'll give you 2 bonus points. If you're on a committee, tell me what you do and what committee it is. I'm interested to hear about that. The older I get and the more I get involved in hospitals and now the university, these committees, they're very interesting to me, and I learned something, and it's very good to network in this line of work and to know people. So I think there's a lot of good things that can come out of being on a committee in a hospital or at a university. There's also policy and procedure committees. They talk about this a little bit in the article. And what they really talked about was, does a hospital's policy and procedures really have evidence to back up those policy and procedures? So that's really the goal there for policy and procedure committees. So nurse retention, basically, it's shown that hospitals have a higher retention rate if they have high quality education initiatives or these committees that people can be involved in, professional development. It really helps nurses hang on. It makes you feel needed. It makes you feel like you're part of something. So that's really important. Also, if you have all these education initiatives, and not necessarily when I say education initiatives, I don't mean like going back to school necessarily, but teaching people about the latest evidence-based practice. Do you have a education nurse that comes around to your floor and shows you, oh, we're changing how we change pick dressings now because this is the latest evidence and this is what you need to do. That's what I'm talking about. They go around and you do a little check off with the nurse. The last hospital I took students to, that's what the educator did. Anytime there was someone of something new, she would come around to the floor, and each nurse, it would take a few weeks to catch everybody. Each nurse would have to go through and talk through how you change a pick dressing now because we've changed what we're doing. That's just one example. It could be several other things. One time I was up there and they were teaching them about, I want to say it was something to do with lab tubes and something they were changing. Oh no, I remember what it was. It was about emptying IV, when you take down IV tubing, your patient's left and you've got an empty bag of IV tubing. If you leave the sharp in the bag, is that considered, do you have to throw it in a sharps container? Can you just throw it in the trash can? So they all had to check off on that. Simple things like that can be evidence-based practice, and we all need to stay up to date. So it's really important that we do that, and it helps nurses feel educated and that they are on the cutting edge of what's going on in nursing today. And that has shown higher nurse retention. Also decreases errors and sentinel events. Providing good quality care is dependent on working with clinically competent and knowledgeable coworkers. I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading one of your discussion posts, or maybe it was your philosophy paper. A student wrote about quitting their job because they were not around people who knew what they were doing. Nobody wants to work in an environment, especially healthcare, where you don't have help. So I thought that was a good example. So how do we integrate our evidence-based practice? I think it's really important as a student to remember to keep it simple. A lot of you with your PICO questions a few weeks ago, you wanted to save the world, and that's great. But really, we need to keep it simple. Some examples I've given in the past is some students wanted to add antibacterial like Germ-X to the computer on wheels or at the nurse's desk. Something simple that you can trial that really doesn't affect a patient, and then that you could get research on. That is doing, you can get statistics on that. That is doing research. So really this week in week 7, what you're going to do is talk about your project, and then we're going to have classmates kind of comment on that and just really talk about each other's projects. And I think it'll be good for you to read everyone else's project and see what they've been doing. Future projects that you're going to do, I can tell you there are 2 more projects within this program. 4108, you will work with a leader and try to implement change. And you're actually going to do that. And then in 4508, you work on a community-based project. You will then pick one of those projects to actually carry out in 4604, which is the last class. So it's really important that you get a good handle on evidence-based practice. Find something simple. And your project in this class doesn't have to translate to another class, but this is where you get your mind thinking, what can I do for evidence-based practice? What can I, maybe what's something I could change to improve, my unit or my floor. This is a good way to get those wheels turning. I'm not going to mark you off whether, if you can't actually implement this project. I just want you to find something evidence-based practice-wise. But just know in the future you've got something coming up as far as that goes. So if you guys have questions, hit me up, email me. Email me if you're on a shared governance type of committee, and tell me what your role is. I'm really excited about that. I'm interested in that, and I think it's good for you guys to get involved. Really appreciate you guys hanging around all semester. I hope you learned something this semester about evidence-based practice and about APA. If you need anything, you've got my email. Feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help. I wish you the best the rest of your journey here at EIU.